Integrations in the news. This is going to be the June 2022 edition. Let's get started. Okay, just to get things started, we wanted to start a little differently this time by going over very quickly some of the different integration types. We're going to do a quick kind of recap of some of the standard, kind of 9 most standard integration types. So application to application. This is probably the classic scenario with integrations is application to application, getting different systems to talk to each other. Then you have microservices integration. If you're not familiar with microservices, the summary is that typically with any system of endpoints, any APIs, you'll have multiple endpoints, possibly several dozen or even hundreds of different endpoints. Well, each of those endpoints can be broken into a microservice, as it's called. The idea is that it can be containerized and standardized and really kind of used across the entire enterprise. And it can be offered to partners, vendors, and really secured very robustly. So the concept is that you're taking individual endpoints that used to be part of a collection, and you're essentially atomizing them or breaking them out and making them available to be used across your entire organization. And this includes the full ecosystem across, any vendors that you work with, that kind of a thing. B2B integration, this is going to be pretty similar to what we're kind of talking about, but basically the idea here is that there are third parties that can tend to turn some of these on, make these available, and they're going to tend toward having more kind of robust security standards and audits and things like that. So kind of a higher standard that you're going to need to operate at in many cases to be able to leverage B2B integrations. Data integration is looking at the concept of kind of a not great set of data, relatively speaking. Maybe it's not very normalized. Maybe it's flat files or scripts that have to run, this kind of a thing. Now, keep in mind, the reason we're sharing this is so that you can take these different types of integrations and at least think about them as you look at the landscape for your integration projects going forward. Do you have these types of projects? Do you have these types of endpoints or integrations that you're going to need to consider? So I just want you to kind of think about these and consider it with your ongoing plans. Platform integration, the increasing diversity of emerging enterprise IT with local, remote, colo, public cloud, and hybrid cloud imposes unique requirements for communication and data. And that is so true. So you're going to see a lot of this kind of hybrid cloud to cloud, local to cloud, this kind of thing if you haven't already. So how are you embracing that and thinking about that? And how will your integration software handle it? Platform integrations. IoT device integrations. This is going to be, as the name implies, Internet of Things devices. This could be Bluetooth enabled. This could be some other form of, serial data connectivity, this kind of thing. Being able to pump that data in intelligently. One of the big challenges with IoT tends to be that you're going to get a lot of data that isn't very useful. That's kind of noise within the spectrum. Next on this list is big data integration. This is always going to be something with iPaaS, especially with enterprise type of groups. Whenever you're dealing with systems that generate a lot of data, you're going to want to be thinking about big data and how you're going to intelligently incorporate this. One of the best ways to clog up and slow down a iPaaS system or any kind of integration platform that you're working with is to put a bunch of data in that's not useful. So you're going to want to think about machine learning, AI, and being able to leverage big data and essentially NoSQL type of queries that you can run to kind of get at the heart of the good data and remove any ancillary noise. And a lot of enterprises are generating tons of data that isn't actually used. So the question here is, how are you going to be dealing with this as you scale and grow, as you inevitably deal with this more and more and more over the years? And you may not even be technically dealing with a mass amount of data, but any organization tends toward generating data that isn't necessarily useful. So how are you figuring that out going forward? Multiple cloud integrations. This is kind of expanding on what we already talked about. The name kind of says it all, but the security and dealing with some of the different API protocols can be a challenge. So how are you thinking about that as you are building out your iPaaS plan? And then finally, event stream integration. This is kind of a confusing way of saying it. The idea is service bus, or basically being able to do a publish and subscribe type of model and being able to leverage the efficiencies of that. Now, this is an absolute benefit for many organizations to improve the effectiveness of their iPaaS platform and kind of the functionality and style of how the iPaaS works is to use a pub sub, publish and subscribe, or event stream type of model. When something happens over here, everyone who's subscribing to it gets updates immediately in real time, as opposed to having to run a scheduled task or a scheduled activity. These are all considerations that we would just recommend that you be thinking about. You want to kind of raise it to your attention so you can consider it and just be reminded about all of these different facets. Okay, now let's take a look at the next article. Okay, so this next article is talking about EDI and the pandemic and just overall iPaaS in general. Now, this particular article says that iPaaS, just in general, is the most important factor in their analysis for competitiveness, according to 74% of the companies that were surveyed in this analysis, in this article. The research carried out by Forrester Consulting, and they basically came to the conclusion that 67% of respondents from organizations that don't have iPaaS say a lack of visibility into the data needed to make real-time decisions and a lack of data integrity due to manual data entry, delays, incompleteness, and errors are major challenges of their firm's current SaaS landscapes. Now, when asked about their plans, 76% of the respondents say their top priority for their organizations this year is to innovate business processes. So how do you do that? Well, basically, you have to modernize the data warehouse, increase the process automation, and generally leverage tools that are going to allow you to focus on that business process innovation as opposed to just getting data synced across the enterprise. Criteria for choosing a iPaaS solution include that it must equip each employee, each team member, with the tools and skills to build and deploy business process automation where needed, 64%. And 46% say that using an advanced iPaaS solution would give their organization a meaningful starting point for IT and non-IT users to automate business processes. So generally speaking, you're seeing this constant trend toward non-IT users, but still substantially, a lot of this is about being able to properly take advantage of the data integration and making it intelligent, and just acknowledging the fact that there will be technical folks involved, there will be non-technical folks involved, and you're trying to eliminate some of the manual steps, which is pretty obvious within the enterprise, so that we can continue to grow and focus on business process innovation as opposed to just manual data integration. Okay, so let's take a look at the next article now. Okay, so this next article talks about key challenges with iPaaS and how to resolve them. Pretty helpful concept in general. And basically the idea is that the market size for iPaaS is growing. We've talked about this in some of our other integrations in the news, and there are a lot of different estimates. This one research article per Grandview Research is estimating that by 2025, the overall market is expected to reach $2.7 billion a year in revenue. Now, as a result, businesses can expect more from iPaaS, and you've also heard me say this a lot. Basically, it's going to continue to focus on niches and key areas of value. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about this article is it's basically saying that the platform, the iPaaS platform, should enable organizations to add multiple capabilities to their business landscape. So this should include customized iPaaS solutions that include enterprise-level security, scalability, support, and just overall capability availability. iPaaS solutions should also support any type of data integration requirement for related teams and work in sync with other technologies. So in other words, have you ever had an issue where whenever you're working with an iPaaS, it doesn't work with a certain protocol or data type, or maybe just a very kind of non-standard integration that you have to complete? Their argument here with the research is that this is really going to be a thing of the past because it's expanding and the offerings are going to get that much better. iPaaS solutions must work for multiple scenarios such as B2B, application to application, cloud service integration, mobile application integration, and of course, IoT. Continuous increase in data volume. You heard me talking about this earlier. The idea is that since an increase in data is inevitable, enterprises must build and manage a platform that can scale with the business while delivering qualitative data insights, essentially getting to the heart of the good data, being able to do that effectively in a performant way, and being able to do it realistically with an overload of data that's going to continue to probably exponentially increase over the years. The other big thing is the importance of a data integration solution that is accessible, functional, and user-friendly. Now, this means that although training and hiring skilled professionals can create a burden for a company, you kind of have this need to be able to have internal folks ramp up and get up to speed. You're also going to have to deal with data authorizations that you can set in place to ensure that data is only accessible to those who are authorized to use it. So think about some of the different roles within an organization and possibly subsidiary companies or vendors, partners, customers. We've got to be able to make sure that the data itself can be structured so that that is the actual resource, as opposed to the idea of these different iPaaS systems being the point of control. It's kind of an interesting concept. So an iPaaS platform must support data literacy and promote a transition to the cloud so that we can essentially, that's the argument of this research at least. Now, for different businesses, you'll continue to see splintering around this topic. Should it all be in the cloud? Should it be locally managed? Should there be a hybrid based on, tokenization of sensitive data? Because you have these kind of competing interests with security and performance and being able to control and manage things locally as well. But basically, the concept presented here is this idea of an enterprise iPaaS. And this is something that Gartner has coined is enterprise iPaaS. So kind of separating out from the standard iPaaS solutions, this more enterprise type of solution. And the idea is to shift the integration management directly to the data consumers rather than IT. So that's a really key concept. So enterprise iPaaS is shifting the integration management directly to the data consumers rather than IT. And by being present on a public cloud, and this is kind of a hypothesis of this article, by being present on the public cloud along with on-prem or hybrid operations, vendors have adopted a modern approach to iPaaS based on data fabric as a service model. So the idea behind this fabric as a service model is that you're going to identify data assets as data products. So again, just kind of think of like the data as the actual deliverable. And if you think about it and you kind of get down to it, that's really what it ends up being about with integrations. And so the idea is that in the data fabric model, every product is unified in its very own micro database and is always in sync with all available source systems, making data accessible to all users. Now, this is kind of a panacea type of an environment, type of a presentation, but the idea is, where is the market going? What are the trends that you're going to want to be aware of so that you can put yourself in front of those and really position your business and your enterprise? And, if you're delivering these services, how can you deliver these services optimally by focusing on fabric as a service or the data as the actual deliverable? Now, this article goes on to say that for every given scenario and integration, both the consumer and producer apps need to be connected directly in a way that they are aware of each other's presence, location, and or address. Because of this relationship, any change, outage, or bug can impact the availability and performance of the data consumers and data producers. So the idea is just kind of going into the mechanics of how this is going to function. Every time a new integration point is installed, the iPaaS flow needs to be rewired again. And everyone can definitely attest to this that's been in the iPaaS field for any time. This can be a huge challenge depending on to what extent these endpoints are modified. The challenges that presents can, in theory, be overcome by adopting an iPaaS solution that offers automated data segmentation and test data management across a scalable architecture. It can be either on-premise, in-cloud, or a hybrid model. So that approach essentially is ensuring architectural agility despite the changes to the integration. So if you have a change in an endpoint, this concept of architectural agility just means that you can make those changes and the overall kind of focus is on the data itself. And because of that, the integration is more flexible and it can handle it gracefully whenever there's a change to a protocol or an endpoint. Okay, so essentially the conclusion here is that iPaaS platforms can help ensure that the entire application stack works in sync with the need for all manual interventions, in theory and at the limit, completely nullified. And that's really the promise of this idea of fabric as a service and being able to do iPaaS. We like to bring these topics up so you can think about them and think about how to actually execute on it. And we'll certainly continue to provide suggestions and recommendations based on what we're seeing in the field too. Okay, so the next article that we're going to go over, it's going to talk about whether or not integration platform as a service is for you. And really, the main idea here is that this is just kind of going into some different topics, hopefully to get you thinking again. That's really one of the main goals behind this posting that we do each month. So use iPaaS when you need to deploy or connect software that exists on different platforms. Any sizable organization has software that runs on premise, as well as third-party cloud-based software that exposes APIs. So essentially, the goal of iPaaS is to provide an easy, often front-end way to coordinate information exchange. So, okay, great. Now, companies that struggle to document the numerous integration points spread across software systems can find an answer in iPaaS. And most importantly, what we'll say is most competitive companies use iPaaS. And this has really been a secret ingredient for decades. Even before the term was coined, iPaaS, you really saw a lot of this actual usage and play with the massive companies that had a lot of scale and were growing very rapidly. These are kind of underpinning philosophies behind great companies, is that they are going to unify their data. They're going to enable their business, different decision makers within their business to be able to get the information they need in as real time as possible, and to provide self-service to their users. So if that describes your situation, then iPaaS is probably for you. Now, one of the things that they talk about is this idea of shadow IT, which has surged with the rise of cloud-hosted resources. So modern workers and managers can now easily obtain SaaS and even entire server infrastructures and application stacks with just a few mouse clicks and a corporate credit card. And if there's no standardization of that, then you're basically going to result in this massive redundancy that you're going to create within the organization, just inadvertently, which is going to create excess cost and major integration problems. Now, for anyone that's been in IT, you know this is a challenge. For anyone that's been on the business side of things, primarily focusing on that, it's also frustrating to have to wait to try to coordinate or to try to get in touch with the right person and align on some of the business decision making. So a proper iPaaS is going to integrate the view of those different technologies. And really the word is unify. Basically unify the data across the enterprise. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about this article is it actually goes on to talk about other options other than iPaaS. So essentially the idea here is that there are some products that are more piecemeal, providing technology for an enterprise to integrate applications built within the vendor's cloud infrastructure. So there may be vendors like Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, SAP, Google, they go on to say, that have their own stack of kind of self-integration that they offer. Now, depending on your use case and where you are in the business's life cycle, this may actually be optimal for your business. It may be optimal for a certain business unit, at least for a time. The main thing is that you're planning it out and you're actually putting this plan into place and you're coordinating internally. One of the things that you don't want to do with iPaaS is just let it happen. This tends to be a recipe for major excessive cost and redundancy, as we said earlier. So the bottom line here is that many of the iPaaS projects that folks are adopting, they're not able to coordinate across the organization. So the planning and the discussions and building a cohort essentially within the company that's kind of focusing around this and relatively growing the focus based on where you're at with the enterprise lifecycle, this is going to be really critical. No matter what the size of the organization, it's the people at the end of the day that are going to be making a lot of these key decisions. So if you want to remove the excessive cost and the redundancy, ideally plan for these things and don't try to fit everything into a single sized box or a single kind of square peg into a round hole type of a thing. Look at where you're going over the next 3 to 5 years and really think about the different actors within the business and some of what their needs are going to be, and be willing to compromise so that you can get results in the short term while focusing on the long-term optimization that you can have as well. Okay, let's take a look at the last article here. Now, this one's pretty interesting. This is also doing some kind of data analysis on the overall marketing automation space. Now, why are we looking at marketing automation? We think this is pretty interesting as really kind of a related topic to integration platform as a service. And really the idea here is that marketing automation closely aligns with a lot of what's happening within the iPaaS space. So in particular, the market currently for global marketing automation is valued in 2021 was valued at 5.45 billion. It's anticipated to grow to 8.58 billion by 2026. So a very substantial market size. One of the interesting things though is that part of what's impeding the growth of the market is data quality, cybersecurity, high implementation costs, and the increasing use of digital technologies such as cloud, mobile, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence in more areas of business, and the growing connectivity of everything depict greater challenges on the level of security, compliance, and data protection. Now, this is a legal minefield, and you're going to want to be aware of these things from a integration perspective. Because if you look at marketing automation, basically this is more kind of toward the kind of consumer facing or the end user interactions, but it's basically one layer removed from integrations. And typically with integrations, you're going to want to be aware of some of the legal implications and changing landscape that's going on. And ultimately, a lot of the cybersecurity, a lot of the compliance and data protection, privacy rules, these kind of things, they're going to work their way back into the integration platform as a service space. So be aware of that. Obviously, with marketing automation constantly growing, just think about it. There are going to be more laws and more privacy protections that are passed in order to prevent folks from getting unwanted, marketing emails, texts, these kind of things, advertisements that follow them around all over the internet. These are going to continue to have more regulation. And it's just essentially going to require higher fidelity with being able to address the marketing automation benefits and the benefits of pulling in data about folks' interaction with your enterprise. How are you going to leverage that so that you're able to turn that into a long-term capability for your organization, even though some of these changes are going to occur? You're going to have more legal issues, these kind of things. One of the other big trends is around AI. You'll see a lot about artificial intelligence within the marketing automation space because really for one of the kind of key advantages that artificial intelligence has to date is generating personalized content for individuals, especially based on a little bit of data that it can use, that it can intelligently cater from. This is a really big opportunity for marketing automation. The use of AI enables better personalization of offers, analysis of customer behavior, and offers data to build mailing campaigns that are more accurate. So as you're kind of thinking about your integration platform as a service and just integrations overall within the enterprise and kind of long-term within your business, how are you going to be taking advantage of AI, not just to improve the integrations themselves, but also to analyze the data, look at big data, and then make great choices from the data? And how can you be part of this discussion and part of this kind of business logic decision-making, essentially, that's going to occur on multiple fronts, not just marketing automation, but several other similar fronts where AI is going to continue to take on more of a role within that space. One of the other things that's really interesting about this is that 58% of the deployments are cloud deployments for marketing automation. So you can kind of see a preview of what's going to continue to happen with the iPaaS space with marketing automation. Relatively speaking, a lot of marketing automation platforms and services are going to be more oriented toward less technical users who are able to do very powerful things with it. Because that's been possible and businesses have figured out how to deliver that quality of kind of business capability without having super technical folks involved, this just means that you're going to continue to see that trickle into the iPaaS space as well. So be on the lookout and be prepared and working toward that as your kind of end solution. The other thing that was interesting is email actually continues to be the dominating share of the marketing automation space. That is absolutely a key aspect of marketing automation. So if you're working with the marketing team, if you're interacting with them, just keep in mind that some of these are the things that they're focusing on is cloud and email. Obviously, they all have different focus areas depending on who you're working with in marketing. But this is definitely going to be something that is kind of a sweet spot for marketing. So anyway, we just wanted you to kind of think about this overall concept of essentially being able to leverage marketing automation and see where it's going to go over the years. There are going to be some consistent themes that include improved customer service, consistent messaging, being able to personalize the connections and personalize the messaging, of course, and analysis and improvement of in-depth customer and campaign data. These are just a few of the primary benefits of this marketing automation. And they're talking about here in the healthcare sector, but just in general, these are benefits. The benefits are the key factors expected to make the overall sector of healthcare, in this case, a really fast growing segment. But generally speaking, what you'll see is marketing automation is going to continue to grow at a pretty rapid pace. And being able to customize and cater the data is going to be critical in enabling that. So how are you going to position yourself in front of that over the next 3 to 5 years? And how are you going to orient your organization so that you can really deliver excellent value as you continue to scale and grow your organization? Okay, with that said, everyone, we just want to say thank you again for watching this Integrations in the News video. If you found it helpful, hit that like button. Feel free to subscribe so you can get more of these whenever they come out, and we will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.